Welcome to the committee, the whole meeting. Our president is incapacitated today, even though he's up here. He has asked if I would chair the meeting. I know you don't like that because I'm going to be very abrupt and not let folks talk all day and all night like they normally do. So, but hopefully we can have a productive meeting. I want to welcome you again, and if you haven't had an opportunity, for those who like to speak in the beginning in what we call the board forum, would ask that you fill out a card like this and give it to the city clerk, and then give you an opportunity to speak for maybe approximately 3 minutes. Okay. He just informed me that it's 1 minute. However, that's flexible because I'm the chairman. Paul Darling, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Chicken
man. Members of council and staff, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I especially want to thank Ms. DeWeese for her responses and notification of this forum. Some of you may or may not be aware of my case before the Code Enforcement Authority, but briefly, I have been cited for keeping chickens improperly on my property. I have met with code enforcement people. I've had a hearing before the Honorable Louis F. Ray Jr., the magistrate. I even confronted the mayor at a town hall meeting. My problem stems from the wording of the ordinances pertaining to keeping chickens. The judge in his ruling made mention of such wording and has allowed me extra time to seek a clarification from council that we all might get a better picture of the intent of these ordinances. So I come here today with nothing more than a request for direction, guidance, any help you can give me in pursuing a resolution to my case through an examination of these ordinances. I've followed City Hall for a long time. This is my first time attending a meeting, and so I'm not very knowledgeable about procedure. And therefore, I would like to know if you have any answers to the question, what is the correct procedure for addressing an issue like this? Who do I contact, when, where, what, etc. I'm prepared to work with the city in any way and through the proper channels, providing as much information and input as desired. I also have a letter here from a neighbor of mine who wanted me to deliver it today. A couple copies here, and I'll drop it off. And
you can just give those to the city clerk.
Okay. Okay. He wanted his voice heard, and I know there might be other times for that. So thank you again for your patience and for your service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Darling. Councilwoman DeWeese.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Darling's comments. He is not in my district, but I just was trying to give him a path and a process to follow for some suggestions that what other cities are doing, other accommodations that municipalities have been able to do. I have several citizens in District 3 that have chickens in their yards contained in whatever manner that they have done and are not a nuisance. I do actually have a chicken that runs my neighborhood periodically, which is quite shocking, so someone's not containing it well. But, you know, he's just trying to do something within his bounds of his property and wants to figure out how. So if the wording of our policy is not clear, or if there's a gap in addressing what he's trying to discuss, you know, we're looking at a council executive today, if that's the proper avenue, but I suggested he work with his district representative and at-large representatives to try to bring something forward.
Thank you. Councilwoman Myers.
Yes, I've actually done a lot of research on chicken ordinances, and I am working with several citizens on maybe some suggestions for addressing some changes to our own ordinance, and hopefully maybe I can have something to put forth before the council as a proposal at the next committee of the whole. And I'll be glad to talk to Mr. Darling about that.
Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Staff is actually anticipating that this would come up, as already looked at the issue. We certainly can bring something forward if it's the will of council It can be relatively easy, some of the changes to the wording to our current ordinance, we're just looking for direction.
Thank you. Councilman Gerald?
Thank you, Mr. President. I can conceivably understand that depending on the age of the ordinance, that it may need some revision. However, I would also be interested in knowing why were chicken outlawed in the first place. We need to discover that. Why was it necessary at that time to develop such an ordinance? So we need to look at why it was done, what would be different now about the world, about society, about everything, health issues, environmental issues, and so on. What would be striking about it now that we want to go back and say, okay, we can modify this and allow this activity within the city limits. So, and I encourage those in their research efforts to discover the cause, and now we're looking at the impact or effect, if you will. But let's take a look at the whole picture. Thank you.
Thank you. What I'm hearing here is I think that we will try to have something at our next committee of the whole meeting after research. And Mr. Darling, I might suggest that you contact the city administrator, Mr. Reynolds, if you have any suggestion where he might can talk to you about which way they're going with it, and we'll have this discussion at the next committee of the whole. Could we do that?
We certainly can, Mr. President, if we could possibly, Mr. Vice President, if we could possibly get a vote by council on that, then I can have my marching orders and I can move forward.
Yes.
I move that we request city staff to work with Mr. Darling and Ms. Myers on a proposed revision to our chicken ordinance.
I'll second that motion.
Probably moved in second. Any comments from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
just a minute.
I just wanted to say, I wasn't going to speak, but I live in the city and in the process of going to have chickens. We just moved in February, so I don't have them yet. But I want to be sure that, there's a bunch of us out there that are involved in chickens, and I want to be sure that it's not just me and Paul and a couple of people getting their input. I'd like to make sure that everybody that's interested can get their input, and I don't know how to do that. I'm just throw that out. And as far as the issue of the age of the ordinance has two parts. The first part was written in 1918. The second part was written in the 1950s. I tried to find out why the second part was written, and there was no go. It just appears in the 1959 code out of the blue. No ordinance was passed or anything. I'd like to thank Robin Tice for helping me with all that, too. She's very helpful. She's
1918.
Anyway, that's it.
Okay, thank you for your input.
Your old ordinance.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Darling. We will
very much.
look that up and be well publicized, and all folks who would like to be for that or against it will be able to have their say on it.
One question, Mr. President, if I may.
Yes. Yes, sir.
As it has occurred many times since I've been on this council, will it be necessary to have a public meeting to hear from both sides? Because certainly there are some people who are for it, and as we know, there are some people out there that are against it. So I don't know if we're going to do a public meeting and have an opportunity to hear the issue from both sides. So if that may be a part of what we do when we announce that the discussion is going to be on the next committee of the whole meeting, should we include a public hearing of some sort, giving all parties, those who are for, those who are against, an opportunity to speak, thereby not making it necessary to have an additional meeting to hear them again. So I think to open it up and hear from both sides at the onset, because it's out there now and people are talking about it. So if we can consider that and go about it in that fashion, we would certainly get a broader representation from the community to discuss this issue.
I'll let staff. Yes, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We certainly can do that, and I guess my recommendation would be is to actually have at the next committee of the whole, or maybe before the committee of the whole meeting, have a brief hearing where we outline what the changes staff are looking at, some history on the current ordinances as best we can, and then ultimately having the opportunity for the public to partake, and then we can then move straight into the committee of the whole, and then you can do your work there.
Okay, that's agreeable. Thank you. Ms. Blair Stevenson.
Good afternoon. I appeared at the last Committee of the Whole meeting at the direction of President Hall, thank you, and Mr. Johnson, and requested that we have that golf cart ordinance be discussed at this meeting, and I just didn't know if, and it was granted, that wish was granted, as far as I remember, and I just wanted to find out if it indeed is in the discussion portion of this meeting.
No, it is not, as far as I can tell. It's not on the agenda. Been a lot of email traffic about this. I would suggest that I'm not prepared to discuss it because I haven't read up on it, and I don't know about the other council members. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We are in the process of looking at all the options, and we want to bring something forward at some point. Staff just doesn't have anything available at this point, but it is in the hopper of things that we are bringing forward.
Any indication when they might fall out?
Well, I guess if it's a priority of this body, we will get it as soon as we possibly can.
Well, they've been riding around without golf carts, I don't think, for some time. I don't think, you know, that it'd be a rush job, would it, Mrs. Stevens?
Well, maybe not a rush, but a rush might be real nice.
A rush.
Would be most appreciated. And I will be helpful in any way that I can. If staff wishes me to do any legwork, I am your woman.
Thank you so much for volunteering. Councilwoman Deweese?
Yes, one of my concerns was that one of the reasons this was brought to council was that it's beginning to be enforced by our police that the golf carts not be driven. So I guess if there's some sort of grace period that we can, I don't know what the reason for the new enforcement of what existed was, but if I'm just concerned that the golf cart drivers in the interim will have a hard time getting around. I know there's some driving around the historic district. I know a lot of people in District 3 use it in the neighborhoods, use golf carts. So I guess I'd like to hear
Some of the
just gonna
business
have a
owners.
reprieve on enforcement or what until we can get something done.
It might be a good idea to folks to just stay out the golf carts until we have a clear understanding of what's going on and what the requirements are. If we have something that forbid them, I think we might want to adhere to that until we look at it. I'd be reluctant to say let's not enforce what ordinance that we have to allow some folks to ride around in their neighborhood on something. That would be my thoughts on it. Councilman Gerald, and then your comment.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And as you have indicated, there has been significant emails floating about, and the last one I read this afternoon prior to coming here dealt with age requirements, licensure requirements. And it seems that people are just thinking up things to ask that we don't have answers to yet. I don't know if there would be a license requirement by the driver. I have no clue as to what the age limit would be. And these are significant questions, and things are just coming at us. And as you've indicated, I don't know if we are in a position to debate or make decisions today until we have heard once again from all of the pros and cons as this comes forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reynolds, want to hear him first?
Yep.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And essentially what we would like to do is to have an education portion meeting, if you will, about the issue. And then ultimately, then at that point, this body can make a decision as to what, if anything, it wants to do. And you know, we, as part of that, we would also bring forward some examples of ordinances. But it is a complicated issue. There's safety issues involved. We want to make sure that we're doing it right. And we want to make sure that we educate all of ourselves initially prior to moving forward. But then, as I stated, once we have that and then you give us direction, we can go from there.
Thank you. Councilman Spencer?
Yes, Councilman Townsend, thank you. I concur with you. Until any formal action is taken, I believe that we have an obligation to allow our enforcement to properly handle this issue. That the more I look at it, we have the public deserves our thoughtful scrutiny as this issue becomes more and more real in terms of translating from some people that are casually doing it and it being their hope and their wishes that it can occur to those that really, I think, recognize the disparity in terms of mass, weight, speed, texting, width of roadways. I could just go on and on. And it's not golf carts, by the way. I think what we're dealing with is street legal vehicles versus not street legal vehicles. We need to get away. I encourage us to get away from thinking about it as just golf carts. I mean, but I've taken up more time than I meant to.
Thank you so much. Yes, Ms. Stevens.
May I close with one little thing? Thank you. Part of what we sent, and Mr. Reynolds, I will send those emails to you too, is the reason that I sent the statutes from the state documents is so that you could read to see what the state says regarding what you can and cannot allow as a municipality, and the definitions, and the fact that you can have, yes, golf carts, which are allowed to be used within a municipality, and you can set a certain amount of those rules and regulations based on what those statutes say. So that is, I was just simply forwarding that on so you could absorb that before today's meeting and discussion. And then we also sent a few statutes, some more restrictive, some less restrictive, so that you could start the mental juices flowing regarding what strikes you as something that would make more sense within our city. And so I'll be glad to forward those to you, Mr. Reynolds, if you would like to have that. It's very simple, bunch of links, and we'll do that. So I can't think of anything else at the moment, but there'll be more.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you providing that to us, and hopefully we'll get an answer to this real soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do is move that we have this as our first presentation discussion item on this at the July Committee of the Whole meeting.
I'll second your motion.
Been moved and second that we have this first item at our July Committee of the Whole meeting as a discussion item.
And the reason that we're doing the chicken one next month, but I think that's much easier to deal with than this ordinance. Makes it a bit more complex.
Thank you, Mr. President. Any comments from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Seems like all the items that we have committed for Boyd Forum. Are there any council actions that I don't see any here? Does anybody else have any? Okay, but the mayor communications and action, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The first item on the agenda for mayor's communications and actions is subject change order number 1, demolition of the former National Guard Armory, bid number 12, TAC 009. The recommendation is that City Council approve change order number 1 to the contract with Craftsman Concrete Contractors in the amount of $44,424 for the removal of additional hazardous materials, asbestos, discovered during the demolition of the former National Guard Armory. Further, that City Council approve the attached supplemental budget resolution to provide funding for change order number 1.
Move to approve.
Second.
Probably moved in second. Councilwoman DeWeese.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I tried diligently yesterday to do my homework on when we originally accepted this property, and there were some concerns about what we would be indemnified for and what some of the environmental issues were, and it was very well written back in March, I believe. But my only concern was that there was a preliminary report done, if we could have some better explanation as to how this asbestos issue was not found originally, if it was a hidden and unseen area of the property. And then also the engineering fees, those are internal fees that we are charging the project basically, and understanding why an additional $4,500 is being charged. If we could have an explanation for those two things, please.
Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and Mr. Owens can address those issues. He's not here? Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
He could if he were here.
Members of council, yes, originally there was, when we accepted the property back from the Reserve Center, they had done a Phase 1 environmental. The asbestos was found when up in an upper level of the ceiling that was not, over the years it had been covered over by another material. And as far as being charged engineering fees, eventually this property will come to the airport, and at that time the airport will pay the agreed upon 3.3 million plus the demolition and any fees associated with engineering.
So we'll be reimbursed at that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Vice President, one part of that is that we've, in order to ensure that everybody understands our internal funding structure, in the past, those internal funds weren't really brought forward as part of our proposals. At this point, we want to make sure that everybody understands what the full contract price is, including our internals. And so from this point forward, actually for about 2 months ago, all of those, anytime some proposal comes before council, it will have our internal costs listed as well, not just the outside contract costs.
Thank you. Any other comments from council, from audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposes? Ms. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The next thing on the agenda is lease agreement, radio tower site, Long Hollow Stormwater Basin. The recommendation is that City Council authorize the mayor to lease the city-owned radio tower site within the Long Hollow Stormwater Basin to Divine Word Communication, an Alabama corporation doing business as Divine World Radio Incorporated in Florida. Subject property would be used solely for constructing and operating a single transmitting radio broadcast facility.
Move the approval.
Second.
Properly moved in second. Councilwoman Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I just wanted a little explanation on this. I know that we have the Hollis-Williams grand scheme, and I guess, you know, it sounds like it's about a 20-year rights that they would have. Is this something that is needed? I mean, you know, it would be great if that space could actually be opened up to public, but the radio tower would sort of be difficult.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and thank you, Councilwoman Pratt. This has been quite a history lesson for me with this particular tower. I've spent a lot of time, actually I think this was probably one of the first things that came across my desk was the tower issue. So let me kind of let you, I'm sure some of you know more about this than I do, but essentially this tower has been in place for quite a period of time. It has been used by the radio station and is in the process, it desperately needs to be replaced. Either we replace it or we don't. It is currently city property because under the initial lease, it became city property after a term of period. But it is in danger of, it really is a hazard. It's located inside the stormwater facility, if you will, and it's fenced in the Long Hollow stormwater area. The land can't be used for anything else. And the only reason that it's allowed to be used as a radio tower is because it is currently there. So recognizing that prior councils had determined not to take action on whether or not to do anything with the lease over the years has just been regenerating per the original lease agreement. And the current funds that the city receives for that is $200 a month. So this has been some time ago that this has all been in play, and as we looked at it, we recognized that we have the safety issue with the tower at this point. It can't be used for anything else. And frankly, the city was not getting its fair recompense based upon where we are today and the value added that it brings. So essentially, the question then is for this council whether we as the tower owners take the tower down, which frankly would cause a hardship to the radio station because where it is located apparently is one of the prime radio location places. Go figure. I've learned a lot through this process. Or not. And essentially what we've done is to, if it's the council's desire to put this forward, we've structured a lease that has both the city well protected, is receiving its fair recompense for the property, and then also is assisting the radio station.
Any other questions from the council? Audience? Yes, ma'am. Yes.
In reviewing the materials that were provided, it appeared that the city obtained title to the earlier one after only 5 years of the lease agreement, and this is a 25-year lease. At any point, do we as a city get title to this, or are we just going to be leasing the space and they will retain title? And I understand this is a Birmingham station, so I was just curious if there was any effort made to get the city to end up with ownership of the tower once it was built.
Mr. Reynolds.
We don't want ownership of the tower, frankly. We currently own the tower that's about to fall down. Well, probably not about to fall down. It's probably not a good statement, but certainly has structural issues. We're not in the tower business, and the good part about this, and part of the way we specifically crafted this lease, and by the way, I am the individual that crafted this particular lease, that the reason that we did this was to ensure that the owner of the tower continue to retain ownership throughout the period, because as it stands right now, we're responsible for that tower. In the future, we don't want to be responsible for the tower, and so even when this lease is up and there is no action by council to re-up the lease or to negotiate a new lease, then the individual corporation is responsible for removing everything out of there. So it is actually in the city's best interest not to have ownership of the tower.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you. My name is Robert Hill from 980 WRNE. We recently joined in a partnership with Mr. Church and his radio station. As you may know, I own and operate WRNE, and for the past year and a half, we are in an upgrade procedure, and we are relying on the tower being replaced so we can upgrade our facility so we can better serve Escambia, Santa Rosa, Okaloosa County. We greatly appreciate any consideration the council can offer us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Myers.
Yes, given the nature of this lease and this property, I just wanted to ask if the city attorney has looked at the lease.
If I may, I don't know if the city attorney specifically has looked at the lease, but both the deputy city attorney and our purchasing office have looked at it and reviewed it as well, providing necessary language that was required.
The name of that attorney?
Stephanie Tillery.
Okay, thank you. She participated in drafting the lease?
She participated in drafting portions of the lease. She reviewed and had recommendations in regards to things that we needed to include to bring it into compliance as well.
Okay, has she reviewed the final draft that's before us today?
I believe she has, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But again, I would remind council that I'm also an attorney.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman DeWeese.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And I seconded this, but I had some of the same concerns Dr. Pratt had with the Long Hollow. The project for the Greenway, Hollis Williams at Long Hollow is a great part of that. And this, as part of design, is to be opened up eventually for a promenade. And some of the neighborhoods to the north actually would access the whole Greenway from that area. And I understand, I'm actually looking at a satellite, there's, a great deal of space and where this is sitting, and it couldn't be used for other things, but have we discussed or looked at the issues of eventually opening this area up if the basin is actually redesigned sometime in the future?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I've been advised by our Public Works Department that this land cannot be used for anything else, period. And the only reason that it can be used for this is because there was a pre-existing tower there.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Reynolds?
No, sir.
Okay, attorney communication action, anything, Mr. Okay, we have a discussion item. As you know, we were scheduled at 1:30 today to meet the candidates that had applied for the council executive position. You didn't know that, did you?
No, it was 2:30, wasn't it?
Well,
In my head.
you didn't know it either?
I thought we were supposed to come a few minutes early to say hello. That's what I
Well,
understood.
yeah, but most of you didn't come early. You came in here time for the meeting.
Thanks
But
for putting that out there.
Yeah, in any event, we had an opportunity we being a few of us had an opportunity to meet 3 of the 4 finalists. And what we're going to do here in a few minutes is to meet those candidates and let them have an opportunity to express their rationale or their reasoning and whatever else that they would like to regarding their desire for this position. So if there's no objection on the part of the council, that's the way we'll go with it, if that's okay. We had, as I indicated, 3 finalists, Mr. Don Kelly, Mr. Terrence Milstead, and Miranda Spradley, who had an emergency, could not make it from Alabama, and Mrs. Vanessa Watson. So we will allow those 3 candidates to come forward and suggest and let you meet them. And then after we do that, we can make a determination at a later date as to what's our next step or whatever the case may be. Is that okay? All right, so with that being said, Mr. Don Kelly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, members of council. I'm Don Kelly. Obviously, you know me. I've worked here with the city for 7 years, and part of that 15 years, about 8 years with Escambia County as a planner, so I've been involved in government for 15 years. I've watched the transition. I've watched the Charter Commission meetings. I've followed the discussions there. I've also watched the transition over the past 2 years. I know what I'm getting myself into here. The position I understand is not well defined, but I have looked at how I can help or what I perceive as ways to assist you. And first of all is the administrative support. Obviously, you have agendas for your committee of the whole meetings and your council meetings. Currently, Elaine Major is fulfilling that role, and I'd love if Elaine stayed on and continued to provide support in that aspect, but also to amend the policies of the city council and the rules and procedures. Those will be constantly evolving, and particularly in issues with the charter, there are things that are not in the charter that really need to be somehow put on paper to be followed. For example, the internal audit that was discussed the past couple of weeks, process, procedure, composition of that committee. That could very well, since it is internal, can in fact be in your policies and procedures for the city council. Another is the draft council correspondence as directed by the council president to external entities as far as those type of duties. Legislative assistant, conduct the research, providing a lot of you do your own research on the issues, and that's great, but sometimes you may want just another set of eyes or another person take a different approach. So that is one way for me to also assist you is doing that research, then provide the findings back to council. Draft ordinances and resolutions. Now granted, some will be coming from the mayor's side, some of those ordinances may in fact come from the city attorney, but then again, as a legislative body of the city of Pensacola, you can draft your ordinances and resolutions, and that's something I can do for you, is putting those things on paper to bring back to you for your approval. Advise council on pending state legislation. Currently, for the past 2 years, I've been serving on the American Planning Association of Florida Legislative Policy Committee. So on a weekly basis, I get memos, emails about everything that's happening in Tallahassee. That information I can pass on to you when I see that it affects the city of Pensacola. Schedule and prepare workshops. Now, it may be a little too late for the strategic workshop, planning workshop for next month, but workshops in the future. And I did discuss, for example, with Councilman Wu, how great it would be to have the Florida League of Cities come in and provide a workshop, including both the mayor's side of the house and city council, to work out some of the issues that they've observed in other places in the states as far as transition, see if we can get through some of the bumps in the road. Ombudsman. This is interesting, is that the council doesn't direct city staff to do anything, and you're constantly receiving complaints from your constituents, and I know it's difficult for you to tell them to go to the 311 and enter the information themselves. But if you take the information, I'll create a form or some format for an email, get to me, I'll put in the system. I'm not directing the city to do it, but I am getting that information in the system so that can be responded to, and yet the council is being reactive. And the other part of that is a follow-up and reporting back to you and or the citizens as far as what's been done in their issue. And next is liaison. As I am going to be the daily presence, if selected for the position, of the council in City Hall. Maybe on the 7th floor where it's a position I don't know, but we'll have ideas of what's going on a daily basis by my presence here. Associated with that, provide coordination with the mayor's office and with the city administrator. Attend directors meetings. And once again, this being an open government, any citizen should be able to attend a director's meeting, but it's one way to keep an idea of what's happening in the city so I can report back to council as far as that information when it comes available. And that's the last thing, is keep the council informed. The communication, I think, is important for this, for the executive and the legislative parts of the city government to work together. So that's an important aspect of the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I'm sorry I didn't put any limitation on time, but I might suggest 3 minutes would be adequate unless a council person have any questions or anything of that nature. Okay, Mr. Milstead, please.
Thank you, council members. I'll be brief. I know you've seen my resume and listened to my phone interview. I'm Dr. Terrence Milstead. I'm currently an assistant professor of community and regional planning at a small state university up in North Carolina. I've been there for 4 years. However, I am a native Pensacolian. I'm 41, about to turn 42, and 30 years were spent here in Pensacola. Grew up in East Hill, graduated from Catholic High School, the University of West Florida, and I spent 6 of those 30 years working as a city planner here. I should say a transportation planner for the West Florida Regional Planning Council. My job at that time was to coordinate the citizens advisory committees of the metropolitan planning organizations in Pensacola, Fort Walton Beach, and Panama City. So in that job, I was a liaison between those citizens boards and boards of elected officials. It's a long story. I know you don't have the time for it. I left after 6 years, joined the Peace Corps, was a community economic development volunteer, working on a UN project in a small village in Bulgaria. Spent several months after that in post-war Bosnia-Herzegovina doing NGO work. So again, my work experience has mostly revolved around bringing the public into the process of local governance in various ways. I spent a year in China living. I received a Fulbright fellowship, wrote my doctoral dissertation on urban planning in the former Soviet Union. In the last 4 years, in addition to teaching graduate courses on land use regulations, planning theory, planning law, and ethics, I've also been a member of my local planning commission, the Mayor's Affordable Housing Task Force. I've also, with a colleague, recently started a small private consulting firm up in North Carolina. And I'm here because Pensacola is my home. And I'll come back to it sooner or later. It's just a question of whether it's going to be sooner or later. It might be in 25 years or it might be much sooner. I followed very, very closely everything that's gone on with this position, going very far back. I left 13 years ago, but I've followed almost on a weekly basis local government here. So this feels like a great time to come back and give something back to my community, and I look forward to chatting with each of you afterwards if you have the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Vanessa Watson.
Good afternoon, Council, President Hall, Vice President Townsend, and apologies I didn't get to meet everyone during that meet and greet. Again, my name is Vanessa Watson, excuse me. My name is Vanessa Watson. I'm a career and technical teacher and business ed teacher over at Warrington Middle School. I actually have experience doing a variety of things, but most importantly, I do Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Publisher. Those are my expertise. Where I come in, what I bring to the city is my organizational skills. I've set tasks based on the goals, and I'm very persistent at getting those goals accomplished. In saying that, I know the difference between being assertive and also being aggressive. Getting somewhere being aggressive is not the way to do it. So I've learned how to be more assertive than aggressive. Also, My experience varies from being executive director over a nonprofit in New Orleans, where I was over a housing initiative responsible for a $20 million budget, where we did do the Housing at Home in New Orleans project. Currently, what we're doing at Warrington Middle School is we're building a technology suite. I am responsible for that construction as well in regards to it's being built as of this summer. Hopefully the completion date will be January 2013. What I bring to the council is organization. I can say this, the question a few asked me was, why do I want to do this? Well, I'm prepared to do this. I'm used to putting large quantities of information together, interpreting that information. One council member asked me, well, how would you understand it? Well, there's resources available. There's city attorneys. I would get that information, interpret that information, and make it comprehensive for everybody to understand. That's what I bring to the table. In addition to that, I have worked with city government. I'm very aware of the different scopes, meaning enterprise operations, which is our port and our airport here, the regional airport. Also with the library, which my children constantly own old library fines too. In addition to that, I also would like to say that I'm very familiar with the neighborhood services. And I can say that I looked and saw our Pensacola Police Department. I served 3 years on the CPAC committee. One thing I want you to remember about me, I'm up here telling you about me, is this. 3 things: learn, earn, and give back. We all have to learn as much as we can. We're constant learners. We earn our money to take care of our families. And then at some point, that little voice inside needs to tell us that we need to give back. And that's pretty much what drives me every day. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I want to express appreciation for all of the 3 individuals who spoke to us. We'll have to make a decision regarding the 4th applicant. She had an emergency from coming down from Alabama, so I have to make a determination whether her absence excludes her or not. I guess it would be the nature of the emergency. But I would think that at some stage that we would want to close out this effort. And our next step, we'll have to determine just where we're going from here. So anybody got any ideas? Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'd just like a little bit of a clarification as to our procedure that we will go from this point. Will it be a recommendation coming from the committee that we established, a recommendation going to the full council for the final decision? Just how are we going to handle that part?
Well, I think some of you might have missed the city administrators and human resource directors' guidance. I think they sent all of you a CD and an email, which had all of their specific responses to specific answers, and you were supposed to listen to that, rank and rate the applicants, which I did.
So did I. But what I was referring to was we were a selection committee of 4, and I remember that process. And what I'm asking is, which process are we going to follow now? Will it be a recommendation coming from that committee of 4 to council, and then council makes the final decision? Or
well, what I was trying to explain, I think that if all of you had that CD, you were supposed to rank, all of the council members were supposed to have received that. You were supposed to rank your candidates, and then we were going to get back together, all of us as a whole, and make a decision.
Well, in that case, let's ask the question, who did it and who didn't? So
I
know
did.
What we're looking. I know I did it. So let's get it out there. Who did it? Who did it and who didn't do it?
Well, I'd like to make a comment.
Just a minute.
Answer the question.
Just a minute. I haven't finished.
I'm asking the question. I want to know who looked them over and who didn't.
Just a minute, please.
I don't like the homework.
If you didn't do it, just man up and say you didn't do it.
There you go. Okay. Hands of those that did it.
No, we don't necessarily need that.
So then everybody going to make the decision when some did and some didn't. That's kind of.
Councilwoman Meyer.
I looked at all of the resumes. I listened to the tape, and I was here early, and I talked to the 3 candidates. Did I fill out this paperwork? No, I did not, because I have a problem with it. I attempted to. some of the questions that they asked, I thought, required me to have personal knowledge. It was more like an employer evaluation of an employee. And I did not have the knowledge of any of these individuals to answer some of those questions, and that bothered me. So I started on it, and I looked at it, and I did not feel that it was helpful to me, so I didn't do it. However, I do have some opinions about the individuals, the 4 individuals. Actually, the 4th one isn't here today for me to talk to. So I just was going to share that information with you, that I have a problem with the questions because they seem to call, some of them do, for personal knowledge of how these individuals work and do things. And I don't know because I haven't observed them. And I don't know that from the limited amount of information I have from them. So that's why I have not filled out this paperwork. So I can fill it out to the best of my ability, but some of the questions I just can't answer because I put down I don't have personal knowledge. So that, you know, if that's acceptable, I will fill it out with that understanding that I can only answer it in a very limited way.
Well, thank you. I just don't feel that it's necessary to fill out anything now. I think you've had a chance to meet them. All of you have a copy of that. I would hope that you come back at the next meeting and be prepared to make a recommendation.
Yes, sir. I'm prepared to do that.
Could we use that mode of operation?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to prolong this too long now. Yes. Councilwoman Wu.
I think, Vice President, you've come up with an excellent plan because most of us had a chance today to have the interaction. Mm-hmm. We can go back and review what's been sent to us, and at the next meeting we can come back and rank what we feel. Mm-hmm. I'd like to also throw on the floor one other issue, and this is something that the city administrator has broached, and that is the status of Mrs. Major. And if you would permit me, what I'd like to do is say, first of all, how much I appreciate everything Mrs. Major has done for me and for the city. I think the 2 folks that have served as president and as vice president can attest to the effort and the support she's given everybody. So coupled with this, what I would like to propose is that we, and I think the mayor and the staff would agree with this, allow Mrs. Major to stay on for a period of 6 months after the start date of the new person to get the new person adjusted to the position. That way we have some continuity. We're not talking about having 2 people. We're not talking about having one person go on forever, but we will have somebody there to train whoever it is that we make a decision should come in and be with us. And so if permitted, I would like to add that to the suggestion that you asked. And I'm just putting it out for discussion.
Thank you. My only thought about this, I wouldn't want Mrs. Major's future working with the city incumbent upon whatever deliberations that we're doing here today regarding that position. I don't know whether what the mayor is thinking about in that light in terms of if we get a person, will Mrs. Major be continue to be an employee of the city, and I would not want to fall into that mode. Do you have something?
I do, and my understanding of the motion is let's say that we don't hire a council executive until October, that Ms. Major would continue for 6 months beyond that October date. The reason that we can't really tie this to when we hire the executive itself is Ms. Major's drop date is the middle of June. And so this would be a new position that she would be hired into, and we give it whatever title we so desired. But that it's not like we could wait until June to do this, because we'll lose her perhaps before we even hire the council executive.
Well, I think that something was sent out raising the issue about whether we wanted Mrs. Major to serve in an interim capacity. I don't know how many of you responded to that. I did. And so I guess my hesitancy is to have Mrs. Major's future tied in to this position. And that's what I'm having some issues with, the way you explain that. Maybe you make some clarification.
Yes, Mr. Vice President. My concern is at the rate we seem to be going at this, Ms. Major can walk out the door and we'll have nobody. Absolutely nobody. And I'm trying to prevent that situation
That would be her
from
call,
occurring.
you know, if that's what she wants to do.
But it's not her call. Her drop is effective the middle of June. And so she doesn't have a choice about that.
What you mean, she has to go out?
Yes, she has to.
She has to go.
Yes.
She can't continue employment.
That's right. So this would be a new hire here for her into, being the liaison, to bridge the gap until we get the council executive hired and up to speed.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And I need someone to remind us, because I believe it was either a recommendation as to the future of Mrs. Major. And I think that came before us as, was it a recommendation, and did we take action on it? Because I think that our actions in hiring a council executive should be independent of what happens with Mrs. Major and any future that she may have with the city of Pensacola. But does anyone remember whether or not that was a mayor's request, or did it come from the mayor's office in terms of an offer, so to speak, while we work through this process? And if someone can go back and bring us up to speed.
Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Essentially, what the mayor had agreed to do is to, in the interim, between the period of not having an executive and hiring an executive, he agreed to have Ms. Major serve as essentially the de facto executive for the council. Essentially, what is needed at this point is a request from this body, so then we can move forward of that if this body determines it wants to do that. So, in other words, essentially making a request to have Ms. Major be on staff for a longer period of time to facilitate the interaction between the new executive and her leaving. So I guess what I'm looking for is some direction from this body in regards to, because what we have now is an agreement between this point and hiring the executive, but we have nothing past that, and I just want to make sure that, and the reason I put in my email is we need to now talk about that next step, and that's what I'm looking for.
Thank you. Councilwoman Marsh.
Well, I think what I heard Mr. Reynolds say is that we can make a request that it would ultimately be up to the mayor's office. Is that correct? I mean, if I make a motion that we extend Ms. Major's position for 6 months, that's a request.
Yes, ma'am, that's a request, and
Well, I'm just trying to find out what you're looking for so I can make the proper motion.
No, I understand, yeah. Essentially, is it a request that Ms. Major stay on for a period of time post-council executive hiring?
Is that what you're looking for?
That's what I'm looking for, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
If that's what this body wants, I mean.
Yeah, understand.
Okay.
Well, it appears that I would like to see Ms. Major stay on for past her drop time, and because I'm not sure that we will have hired somebody by that time. and I think she would certainly be extremely helpful to someone. So I'll make the motion that we retain Ms. Major for a period of 6 months. But that's the motion.
Was there a motion on the floor?
There's already a motion on the floor.
Oh, there was. Who made it?
He didn't really
let's-
phrase it quite as a motion.
Was it
He
the same
seconded
thing?
it Anyway.
Well, it got a second, though.
Oh, got a second.
Oh, you did make a motion.
You made a motion.
Okay, and it stayed the
Okay.
same thing, so.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
And I had seconded, I just have a question about, because I think we're accomplishing two different things here. These dates are going to overlap, Ms. Major and the hiring of our new executive, but there is an issue with her drop date. If this motion needs to say the 6-month contract to commence the following day at midnight, or what is the exact, so there's no gap in her employment, or all those issues. I don't want to start a
do we have to be specific on all these technicalities? Can't we just go ahead on and do this? Tell on Mr. Reynolds.
Yes, sir. We'll make sure that everything is done according to ensuring that there are no gaps.
Thank you. Mr. Councilman.
I was going to thank you, Mr. Vice President. I was going to try to be quiet today, but this brings another question to mind, and I hate going there, but what is our policy when someone, when their drop date happens, what is our policy from there on to retain an employee?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Excuse me, Councilman Johnson. Essentially, the mayor has determined a little history. In the past, it's my understanding that there were quite a few times that where an employee would leave per their drop, and then they came in under contract. The mayor has greatly curtailed that at this point, and I believe about 2.5 months ago, I sent an email to all individuals that had their drop date coming up within the next 2 years, explaining that that was going to be curtailed. And so, on very limited opportunities will that actually occur from this point forward.
So, as Councilwoman DeWeese said, that it would have to be at midnight when her drop happens, that we would have a 6-month contract with her. She can't come back as an employee then.
Yes, sir. She would then be under contract.
Okay. I would support that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Councilwoman Myers. I'm sorry.
I'd like to go back to our conversation about selection of a council executive, and I went through that process, the audio tape, and filled this out. I think we're past that point as well, Mr. Vice President, and I would like to, before I make the motion, make sure that council's ready to do this, but that we be prepared at our Thursday meeting to rank our choices, first, second, third, and fourth choice, and the person with the lowest score will be our executive. It's an easy process. There's no questions to answer. There's no details. Ms. Myers has had an opportunity to meet 3 of the 4 applicants. I don't know if anyone else on council needs more time, but we've been working on this for quite a while. My entire tenure as president and most of Councilman Hall's tenure as well. So.
Yeah, I was just talking to the city attorney just what a difficult position that we're in, that we have to deal with such a sensitive issue out in the open, out in the sunshine. The mayor can go and hire somebody or nobody, none of the interview people that's applied for a job, and he doesn't have to give an explanation. For us to be able to talk among one another, we have to do it in public, and it gets very, 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 very sensitive. But I'm just going to lay it out there that if I were the HR person that was put in charge of hiring, and that they're all extremely great candidates, but I've got a problem being the right fit for this job. I might hire them for 10 other positions in City Hall, but for this job, I'm just not comfortable with that. And to be forced to rank somebody, whether it's first, second, third, or fourth, for a position that I'm just not comfortable with them holding at all, in other words, I'm just telling you that I'm not ready. And now I may be forced to vote on it on Thursday night, and one way or the other, but right now I'm just not there.
Did I get a second for your motion?
I haven't made a motion. I just
thought you
wanted-
made a motion.
No, I said I'm not going to make a motion until we talk about it.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And I hear both parts of this, but eventually this is going to be out in the open. I mean, whether we do it, I mean, those of us who sent in rankings, that's public record now, and so, and I'm sympathetic to Councilwoman DeWeese's urgency as well, because, I mean, I don't know what information the rest of us can get between now and Thursday. I think that when we previously started this process, went through this, we had a special committee of the whole before the main meeting on Thursday night, and that might be a more appropriate place to maybe have some of the private discussion. I mean, it would be in the public, but it wouldn't be in front of, I understand the ESP award winners are coming or whatever. We don't need all of them to sit through listening to us. And I think that it would be nice to go ahead and resolve this. These candidates put in their applications 6 some odd months ago. They're ready to know. And, you know, our next meeting isn't for 3 weeks, I think. So I won't remember what I've learned today listening to them in 3 weeks. I mean, I hope I will, but I think that it would be nice to maybe do a special committee of the whole at 4:30 before our big council at 5:30, if that would make sense.
Would that be out of the sunshine?
It would be in the sunshine, it has to be.
Okay.
But we'd do it in the separate meeting room.
Is that a motion?
I move that we convene at 4:30.
Been properly moved and second that we have a special committee of the whole meeting prior to Thursday you're talking about.
Yeah.
And make a decision on this. Any unready questions? Yes.
If I'm unable to make that 4:30 meeting, I will live with and be very satisfied with what happens with the majority of this council. I just want everyone to know that I feel comfortable with this council, the majority of this council's decision on who to hire. Thank you.
Thank you. I might add that for those of you that have not had an opportunity to speak to the candidates, I'm almost certain that they would be willing to stay around here after this meeting. You can speak to them individually. I would think so. Yes.
I'd like to ask Councilman Johnson if his chances of attending would increase if that meeting started at 5 o'clock. Because I recall last time we discussed, it was a fast meeting. I thought all of us weighed in rather effectively and quickly, and I think it's one of those I would encourage all of us to participate in person.
Please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice President. Again, I feel comfortable with the decision that the majority of this council will make on all these 3 qualified candidates that I had the opportunity to meet with earlier. So with that said, if I'm not there, I feel very comfortable with the decision this council makes, the majority of this council makes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody from the audience?
Could I still, in spite of Mr. Johnson's comment, I would prefer a 5.
I amend the
Thank
motion
you.
to 5 o'clock.
Meeting's at 5 o'clock.
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Mayor. Yep, I'm sorry. Go.
Is that enough time to advertise? And there are certain, don't you have to have so many days to be able to put it in the paper and advertise for the public to attend this meeting?
Set the time of the train.
We've done it before.
Do we have enough time?
Yeah.
We have enough time. Thanks for that info. Mrs. Dubuisson?
Watch that cup. It's about to get
Yes,
knocked off.
I want to thank council for deliberating about this again, and I know that there are several layers to your executive needs that y'all keep talking about, but I believe that these 3 candidates all seem to have wonderful qualifications, and in lieu of them being your perfect candidate, Mr. Hall, I would really encourage you to look at what they do bring to the venue and rank them and get yourself someone live who is able to interact, because in the meantime, the public has no one but you folks directly to get to, and your phone boxes, I know, are staying full because some of us can't leave a message when we have a question. So I'd really encourage you to look at these 3 excellent candidates very closely. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so come prepared to do that next Thursday.
Was that a no?
Oh,
I think you had a no.
do we have a no?
Right here. Yeah, two then.
Two? Or weren't you?
Who else?
Ms. Meyer?
Let's do it again. All in favor? Would you raise your hand? Opposed? Thank you. Okay, next item is the consent agenda items. We had, Madam Clerk, what do we have? Item 1 and 2.
Move the approval.
Then move approval. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We got an information item, proposed amendment to the Land Development Code. Any comments about that? Okay. Any kind of new business, council?
Yes, just want to make sure that we get this put on the agenda for June. Ms. Jean Wallace of the Scenic Highway Foundation would like to have the Scenic Foundation plan presented to the council, and she thought it was going to be for today, but somehow or another that there was some confusion after the last meeting. So I'd move that the Scenic Highway Foundation make its presentation for the City Council during the next City Committee of the Whole meeting in June.
Second.
I'll move to second. Mr. Reynolds? do you have a
Yes,
comment?
thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. President, can you forward that information to me so I can make sure it gets on the agenda?
Okay, yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You know, another council member? Yes.
Oh, wait, speaking on this, we got to vote on it? Or?
Yeah, I'm asking for comments. Anybody? Audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Councilwoman Pratt?
I have two things. One was I meant to ask this on our executive thing. What is the procedure after we create the ranking? I remember that the mayor was going to interview last time. Are we going to have that as the process this time? Or if we vote to hire them, will that be the person who is hired?
I don't recall the mayor being involved in an interviewing process.
Last time,
Did we?
the guy we approved, and we had an email that said they were still trying to set up the chance for the mayor to interview them, and so I just didn't know, in terms of our time frame, what the next steps are. I'm hoping Thursday night we will have a person's name down, and then where will that name go?
Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. As the charter states, all employees are employed by the mayor, and I will do everything physically possible to make that to be a very smooth process.
Thank you.
And then I had one other thing was,
Well, I think
on
Councilwoman
this
Myers
one.
might want to say something on that subject.
Well, this is one of the problems with hiring a person who is going to be basically ultimately approved, it sounds like, by the mayor, which brings up another interesting question is who has the authority to fire that person? I mean, if we're not satisfied with the job the person is doing. I have very strong misgivings about hiring a person under those circumstances. I would prefer to hire a person under contract so that that person would have complete independence from the executive branch of the government. I think that's the most appropriate way for the legislative body to work.
Thank you. Okay, what's your?
And I will say that maybe that is part of the discussion, whether we do it as a contract, but I think that has merit. The other issue was something that got brought up at the last committee of the whole, I think, and then it became mentioned a couple of times tonight in terms of informing the public on issues that are coming and what the current structure is for keeping people in the loop. I know we used to have the email system, you could sign up, and there have been a number of community events that people have wondered about whether there was notification And so I think there was a question at the last committee meeting about what our public outreach system is. How do we reach out and give people information? I just hope we could get some sort of idea on how we're communicating to people, and whether there's a way to, if people care a lot about chickens or not about chickens, that they can find out we're going to talk about chickens. So I just thought that might be something to have information on in the future.
Councilman Spencer.
I look forward to our newly hired council executive to helping us design that roadmap. Might be one of the first assignments.
Okay, in addition to that, this Dial 311 is very
But the
active.
issue is more, I mean, there have been community meetings that, I started getting emails from people who had said, I didn't know about the community meeting, I didn't even know it was canceled. I'm like, I didn't know about the community meeting either. And so, how that information.
Do we not normally publicize our committee, public hearing meeting?
They're published in the paper if you
Yeah.
look, but it used to be that you could get email notification on those things, and I just didn't know if that system still exists, or so I just was wondering if we could get more information on those sort of things.
Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We have not changed anything in regards to notification, but I will say that we will in the future. Ms. Mack brought up some really great ideas in regards to Facebook, Twitter, some of those things we're just now starting to be able to integrate into our notification procedures. There's a lot of opportunities out there to be better at informing the public. As you've heard me say before, we're currently moving to take a hard look at our MIS structure and our MIS department to ensure that we're doing everything we can to provide that service both internally and externally, but that is a big piece of it. But now that we have an administrator for MIS on board, relatively shortly we're going to start moving down those roads, some of which that Ms. Mack brought up.
Okay.
I can clarify. I can clarify really quickly. The trigger in the past with the old website was anytime our city calendar was updated, an email was sent to the people on that list. So even if I was only interested in Parks and Rec, I got every update. So I don't know if that can be written into the new format so that anytime the calendar is changed, an email is sent to those interested parties. And it does keep you very well informed. You'll know about everything going on.
Inasmuch as they are dealing with the management information system, I think if it's incorporated in that, it might solve the problem. Okay. I'm sorry. Well, I'm sorry, did you have your hand up?
I had my hand up, but I'll.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to respond to the communication issue that Dr. Pratt brought up, because I have a concern about how I'm able to get information in order to address concerns my constituents have. And also, it relates to how effective a council staff person can be in meeting the needs of the council, which is one of the needs, getting information. This memo we received from the mayor's office May the 15th regarding contact with city council members, I find highly disturbing. The pertinent sentence, I request that all future communications and dealings between the individual city council members and city employees be done through the mayor. It goes on, gets worse. I believe it violates my rights under the charter to make inquiries and investigations. Furthermore, as an example of how bad this policy is, I want to share with you a real quick piece of information. The next day, I sent Mr. Garza a very simple, straightforward little email. It says, At Monday's meeting at Tryon Library, a number of citizens complained regarding the lack of road surfaces on the Carter, Maybell, Dunmire Wood roads. If I remember correctly, these 3 roads were on the resurfacing list the council approved for 2012. I am inquiring as to the resurfacing status of these 3 streets. When are they scheduled for resurfacing? I plan to hold a neighborhood meeting soon and would like to update the residents on this issue. Thank you, Sherry Myers. The response I got from Mr. Garza the next day is, I must request that you direct subject question to the mayor's office. That response is unacceptable. Then, shortly thereafter, I received a response from John Asmar, basically telling me when I could expect those streets to be resurfaced. I find this is unacceptable. It's a violation of my rights under the charter as a city council member. And it gives me great concern that any staff person who would be under the supervision of the mayor or his staff would be able to effectively serve this council. That's why I am inclined not to support the hiring of any person other than someone under contract. I know I'm dealing with 2 different issues kind of right now, but they're not. So I haven't decided yet how I'm going to address the mayor's memo, but I am not taking this sitting down. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And I would like to echo my concerns. I think we have hit the height of ridiculousness here. I do want to go back to the actual email that was sent about council communication, and it talks about exactly what Councilwoman Myers said, that it's except for inquiry or investigations in good faith by council or any council member. The joke has been, since this came out, that citizens that we represent actually have more access to information than we do. It is foolery. It is ridiculous and an embarrassment to this council to be expected to follow the path around someone's elbow to get our inquiries taken care of or issues. I had a very simple request, and it was actually an inquiry. You can inquire all you want, and I will not comply with this. If the action is do not respond to Councilwoman DeWeese, then that so be it. But I want you to consider my concerns because of the path of this email that it had to take. Again, Mr. Garza was not able to respond directly to a very simple inquiry about work that we had done on Scenic Highway when the debris was planned to be picked up. I had the email. Mr. Reynolds was forced to respond, please assist. So Mr. Reynolds, who's trying to allow department heads to run their department, is having to intervene in something that simple. But the illogical path that this is taking at this point, that everything must go through the mayor's office. I know Mayor Hayward travels quite a bit, and I'm not even certain he reads emails. I know that he has a staff that supports him and does a good job of it. But so if they're reading those emails, the chief administrator is being left out of the loop of the departments that he has been tasked to run. He is highly qualified. He was hired to do that, yet these are taking a circuitous route to Mr. Asmar for response. He's a special projects chief of staff to the mayor, and the chief administrator is not being allowed to interact with council, which I thought he was doing quite well and represents us well and has, I think, the highest amount of respect for council as far as on the mayor's staff. So we cannot give instruction. We cannot tell staff members what to do on any level. That is something that we would have to resign if we were actually giving instruction to staff people. But to inquire and follow up on a citizen's concern or need and to be blocked from that by this policy is unconscionable. And again, you know, if we just apply the heavy-handed application of this charter that has been interpreted here, then yes, we don't have any recourse. But I'm not going to take it laying down either. This is ridiculous. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yeah, I just kind of turned it around last week. I had a call from the purchasing office wanting some information from me, and I says, I'm not allowed to talk to you. They were incredulous. They were incredulous that I refused to answer the question. They pressed me for 5 minutes, and I said, I don't care how many times you ask, I'm not telling you, because I got that memo from the mayor there. And it's, so I think it's silly. I think it'll resolve itself, fizzle out over a period of time. But until it does, I'm going to comply with it and don't have to like it. A little side note, though, is I have 2 really good friends in the police department, and one of them's a poker buddy of mine, and we get together about once a month. I called him up at the end of last week on his cell phone, and he says, I don't think I'm allowed to talk to you, because now it's gotten all the way down to the troop level there. He says, I'm not sure I'm allowed to talk to you. And of course, I knew exactly where he was going with that, but I think it'll resolve itself over time.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I, too, found this, this memorandum very disturbing. Who actually wrote this? Was that you, Mr. Reynolds? Did you write the cover of this memorandum?
No, sir.
Did you write this, Mr. Messer?
How did I know that question? I guess I'm becoming more astute with working to the council. No, sir.
So, did you review this, Mr. Messer?
No,
before
sir,
it was
I
sent
did
out?
not.
You did not. I was wondering, so then I assume, so does anyone know who wrote this? Was this Mr. Asmar that wrote this, then I assume?
Councilman, I was actually in Wisconsin when it was drafted. I have no knowledge.
Okay. It concerns me, not only in this regard, but in any of these leases that get handed off the 7th floor. The Belmont lease recently came out of the 7th floor, and our city attorney, I believe I can remember from recollection, didn't have the opportunity to review that lease. And this concerns me. We have a city attorney for a reason, and I would think legal documents coming out of the 7th floor would be reviewed by our city attorney. Which, if I could, do I need to make a motion that we have the same person who gave us this memorandum maybe give us their opinion on Section 4.04 and prohibitions? The last sentence of A, where it talks about the city council may, however, express its views and fully and freely discuss any and all matters with the mayor pertaining to the appointment and removal of city officers and employees. I'd like to have that person explain that to me in a memorandum. And then I'd like to also have that person explain to me in a memorandum, Section 4.02, City Council, to inquire into the conduct of any municipal office, department, agency, and officers to investigate municipal affairs, and for that purpose may subpoena witnesses, administrative oaths, and compel the production of books, papers, and other evidence. I'd like to get this person who did this memorandum to do memorandums on both of those in the charter, because I find this offensive myself, and I don't like this heavy-handedness that we have to deal with down here, this bullying that it seems like that's occurring here. I mean, you know, to me it becomes somewhat counterproductive. It seemed like we could get on a situation to where we work hand in hand to make this community a better place, but this heavy-handed memorandum I find offensive. But I would like to see if at some point maybe we can get the city attorney at our next committee of the whole to explain to us exactly what both of those mean. So because maybe we need to take a look at the charter a little bit more, and as Councilwoman DeWeese talked about taking a look at it for the letter of the law and some things that maybe we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney, would you take that action and
I'll second
bring
his motion. I think
I'll make that as a motion.
He didn't make it into a motion.
Could you make the
Okay.
I think he was. He said he did.
Got someone in the audience?
Yes. You
Yeah,
did
motion.
yeah.
I'll make that as a motion. Thank you.
I seconded that to have those two parts of the charter addressed.
4.02 A3 and 4.04, the last sentence of A. Thank you.
Thank you. I got a motion second. Yes, Mr. Attorney.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Serving Chairman. Of course, depending on the will of the council, I would be delighted to examine any part of the charter and render an opinion. However, I would respectfully suggest that if we're going to go that route, that you first obtain clarification from the source of the memorandum, so I don't end up conflicting myself out from either serving you or the mayor. In other words, I think the basis of my evaluation and examination should be the explanation of what it means. I mean, at this point, all I can tell you is that I took a cursory look at it, and apparently it means what it says. I mean, I'm trying to be as diplomatic as I can here.
I appreciate it.
Let me just sort of put it this way. I don't want to get caught in the middle, because obviously I have two duties. I represent the mayor, and I also represent the council. And to the greatest extent possible, I'd like to keep that arrangement clean. In other words, I'm fond of recollecting in arguments, particularly in Escambia County, where the one party of the other says, look, I don't have a dog in this fight. Well, I don't have a dog in this fight, and I would rather keep my dog out of it until we get some clarity.
Well, could we ask the person then to wrote this memorandum to give us to analyze this part? That we can. Oh, yes. Okay, that's true. Well, anyhow, I made a motion in a second.
I think practically what you can do is look at Mr. Reynolds as the mayor's designee and ask him to take your request to whomever.
Thank you. Notwithstanding what we're trying to accomplish here, it would be a sad item if we have to go outside to get legal advice because of the arrangement that council has. I think if we need to have a strict interpretation of the law, however it falls. That would be my opinion. And there is a such thing as retaliation, et cetera, if in fact you're given a legal opinion about what has been requested. And that somewhat bothers me to that extent, that we might have to go beyond the scope of our legal assistance here to get information. And I hope that's not the case.
Well, I think there's a motion on the floor that's been seconded, and I'd like to call it for vote.
Understand. There are some individuals out in the audience who would like to speak. Could I get that? Yes, sir.
Hi, just a question I'd like to pose to the council about this issue. I'm actually a candidate for city council, and in speaking to some of the folks, just for informational purposes, that work with the city, I was told there was one day it was basically the information that you guys deal with that's supposed to be public, it was free flowing. And then the next day it was, oh, the mayor says that you have to take this to the mayor's office as a candidate in order to get an approval to have this discussion or get this information. Now, to me, and there may be a misunderstanding on either part, but I believe that that's almost a constitutional issue. If it's public information that you as employees of the city are dealing with, it should be something that the public should have access to, regardless of if they're a candidate or not. I'm a citizen. So that's just simply my point. It's a question. I don't necessarily need to get an answer, but I just wanted, for the record, to express my also disapproval of this type of, what's the word I'm looking for, this type of mentality. So.
Thank you. To have someone else, yes.
I really believe that you guys need to go back and have the charter redone in some areas. You have no power. You have no power whatsoever. You have an attorney that does not work for you. The school board have their own attorney. The superintendent has his own attorney. His loyalty is to the mayor. No disrespect. The mayor hires everybody. You can't go out and do a contract to hire your attorney to give your opinion because the mayor is the only one who can write contracts. You can't do anything. We need to have the charter reviewed and have some changes made in the charter. Not the whole charter, but you need to get your power. You don't have any. You have no voice whatsoever. You can't hire anybody. You can't fire anybody. You can't sign contracts. You can't ask questions. Even the city administrator was chastising you for bringing issues back up that you brought up before. You answer to the mayor and his team. You don't do anything on your own. You need to get your powers back for it can be a check and balance. You don't have a check and balance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
I would like to respond to the last person who spoke. You brought up some very good points. However, the council actually does have quite a bit of power. Well, it depends on whether we want to use it. We do have the power to contract. We can contract for our staff person. We can do that if we want to. So I just don't want the public to believe that we are completely without any remedy. Okay?
Thank you. All right, the question has been called. Could I have a vote? All in favor of the motion? Which?
Councilman Johnson.
Councilman Johnson, would you recite your motion again?
Yes, I would like to have a memorandum, a letter of explanation about exactly what, find my glasses here, 4.02 City Council number 3, to inquire into the conduct. That is the first part of the charter, and then the second part would be 4.04 prohibitions, and that would be the last sentence in A, appointment and removal.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposers? Okay. Yes, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Councilman. I'd like just to kind of maybe if we can take a step back and one of the interesting things I've as you know, have previously served in the council manager form of government as a manager for counties, and as part of that, we actually had a similar in the one county that I worked for. We actually had a similar language that actually was adopted as ordinance, and here's the reason why. As someone that tries to run the day-to-day parts of any organization, it's important that, one, we have knowledge as to what's going on in the organization, and especially knowledge of concerns from the governing body. The other part of it is that there are times where, if it's not explicitly stated, there will be, and the reason it's explicitly stated, so everybody understands, is that, you know, direction needs to come from whether it's the council manager form of government or whether it's this form of government, direction needs to come from that individual that's responsible for the day-to-day operations. That's the thought process behind it. Well, that's the thought process that I see behind it. That's the thought process that I see when it comes to any government, is to ensure that the operations of the government are not impacted by a single person. This body has power as a body. And that's why I always encourage the body to take votes, so then we can then move forward. But when it comes to the individual thought process of a single person, that's a different thing. And it's incredibly important, again, to recognize that those that are responsible for running the day-to-day operations, that we keep that information flow. Ms. Myers, in her example, did get the information that she requested. And I just think it's important to understand that those are probably part of the thought process that went into putting the memo together.
Thank you. DeWeese.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and I want to thank Mr. Reynolds for his explanation and opinion on this. I do want to point out from a councilperson perspective, my concern that everything that I do as an individual council member must be blessed by a council as a whole. Because we represent individual districts, there are many issues that there is an evolution to an issue. Sometimes I don't know until a month into something the frustration of a citizen, and I finally get the call and they've had it up to here. But I have to investigate that. I have to inquire city staff. I have to do the background on it. And to have to come to council and go, hey, you guys, I have an issue in my neighborhood, you know, just north of me, and I need your blessing to be able to run this through staff. That's illogical, that we are individual representatives. We are not beholden to anyone on council. We as a body vote to make, you know, decisions and approve a budget, but we are individual representatives of our district or at large. So there are going to be situations that I would investigate. I have one right now that is not something that needs to be elevated to a council level until there's more information and more background, quite honestly. So I don't want that to be a staff perspective of absolution that any inquiry we make has to be blessed by the rest of us. That's not what we're doing here.
Mr. President, if I may.
Yes.
That's not what I'm saying, and I apologize if I inartfully said it. I will endeavor to continue to be the individual that can facilitate any concerns that this body has when it comes to getting things done. You know, as soon as I find out about an issue, then I'm going to put the gears in place to try to effectuate a solution to that issue. What I'm saying is that when it comes to directing the organization, then those are the decisions that have to come from the council as a body when it comes to the policy issues. Also understand that this is not that different from, as I understand, and I have not independently verified this, from missives that have went out from Tom Bonfield when he was here, and frankly, missives that I put out when I was the manager of other organizations. And it certainly wasn't meant to be an affront when I did it, and I don't believe it was meant to be a front at this point.
Yes. Okay. Councilman Meyer.
I just want you to realize how what I think is illegal and an infringement on my rights under the Charter and the United States Constitution. This policy has a chilling effect on my right to communicate with people. It also affects me as a citizen, and I'll give you a good example. There is a yield sign that was in front of my house where two roads converge. In between those two roads are tall bushes and trees. This is an emergency. You're going to have two cars colliding there. That impacts me individually. It's in front of my property. It's a street that I have to navigate every day, and it's a concern to my neighborhood as the neighborhood association president. But I can't call up Mr. Garza and tell him, you know what, this yield sign is gone. Because I'm a city council person. That's going to, I guarantee you that's what he's going to say to me. But this doesn't, yes, I'm concerned about it as a city council person. I'm concerned about it as Sherry Myers, who has a piece of property and a dangerous situation in front of my house. But because I have the title of city council person, I can't call Mr. Garza to get that addressed. No, I've got to call the mayor's office. Got to call the mayor.
Thank you. I want to close out this conversation.
If I may, sir, I would just humbly request that this body contact me directly with those issues, and I will do everything I can to see that they're taken care of.
We're not allowed to. The memo says the mayor. We're not allowed. That's my issue, is we're not allowed.
We've asked for an interpretation with our motion, so let's deal with this later.
Mr. Vice.
Just a minute. Yes, sir.
Could I just please have one small point of clarification, because I know how these things happen once you hit the gavel. the tasking for that interpretation, as I understand it, and just correct me if I'm wrong, is not on my office.
No, he requested that the person that drafted.
Just want to make sure it's.
Yeah, Mrs. Dubus.
As a citizen who's often asked by some of you council members if I can get some information, I can tell you that I find this is an absolutely ridiculous suggestion on whomever's point it was that drafted it. You folks should have the first and immediate access to any information that the city has, and you should have the ability to go directly to the staff of this great city. I understand the charter says you may not direct them. There's a difference between directing and inquiring, and I believe that this is a real mistake on whomever's decision-making point it was. And if you're listening from above, you know, I think it needs to be corrected. You folks are scrambling for an opportunity these days to communicate clearly, and if you have to wait until someone can conveniently give you the permission to speak to the people who have the information, it just slows things down more. So I ask you to aggressively address this and retain for yourself the ability to go directly to staff, just as any citizen has. Thank you. And I'm sorry, Mr. Reynolds, you are the day-to-day operator, but the person who wrote this is not the day-to-day operator, and that seems to be the problem. We have a constant changing of who's in charge, and the community gets confused, and the community's tired of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry?
Not hardly open and transparent. I thought that I had directed that to the city attorney. I did not. Okay, so who is going to give us a memorandum about those two?
We can only ask the mayor.
Mr. Reynolds?
No, I think the motion was that the person that drafted
This memorandum, well, that would be Mr. Asmar. Let's go ahead and say his name, so.
I don't know who drafted it. Is that who drafted it?
Well, we know that Mr. Reynolds didn't, and Mr. Messer didn't, and we know the mayor probably didn't, so that only leaves one other person, unless there's Casper the Ghost up there on the 7th floor that maybe slid in and out and wrote it, but,
Okay. So I think that's what the motion said.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
So who's going to just one more comment, if I may be given the opportunity to do so.
Yes, sir.
And all of you know me well enough by now to know that I will remind you of things gone past. I was one of the individuals, in fact, I was the individual that asked us as a council to take, when we were about to vote on the charter as it's written today, I had asked the council to give ourselves 2 weeks to evaluate it and look at what was really in there, to develop the proper interpretation and understanding of where all of it was going. I was outvoted. And what we did at that time, we missed the opportunity to open that book and find out what was in it. And thus, here we are. I just want to remind you, and when I bring you an idea, y'all better listen. Because we should have listened in and we wouldn't be doing this foolishness.
Thank you, sir.
But this is Mickey Mouse CO. Thank you.
Change the topic.
I just want clarification on our strategy session and policy discussion, because we had tentative date, but I asked Ms. Major for the exact time and date, and it has not been firmed up, as I understand.
Mr. President, do you remember?
We tentatively said May 30th, and then I asked for a time.
That was my understanding, but ask the chair of that.
Because I will tell you, I have 2 conflicts that have stacked up in that morning.
Are you asking me? I'll tell you. And I'll say it again. Unless you read that charter from cover to cover, we'll be wasting our time. So you can decide on whatever time of day you want to do it. But I suggest you look at that charter before we do anything. Don't come in there unprepared. And as a teacher, I used to say that to my students all the time, and I'll say it now. If you come in there unprepared, then you're going to be wasting my time. I don't want to do that.
If I might make a suggestion, is for you to put out an agenda, have Ms. Major distributed among us, perhaps even publish it for that workshop and different parts of the day. And I think that it would be appropriate even for you to put in that memo, provided we don't respond to that email, what it is you desire us to do in preparation for that meeting.
And then under those circumstances, Mr. President, I would require that individual council members prepare the questions and the things that they want to know. You got to look in the book to see what's in it and let us know what we want to discuss. Don't come in there with the whole thing and we're going to start bouncing all around in the room. Jot down your questions of what it is you need an interpretation of, and then that'll give us some direction in terms of where we want to go.
Councilwoman DeWeese.
I just want to ask my question differently then. If we could have Ms. Major verify availability of council on the tentative date, and if that is not available to all or the majority, another date. I don't have a firm date. That's what I'm trying to find out. I have a lot of other things that I have to plan.
Thank you. Mr. Gerald, can you
Just one more thing.
ask her to send that out, please?
Yes, I will, but one more thing. Do we have money in our budget for armor before this meeting? Armor.
Armor. No. Do we have anything else to come before the group? Anything else?